It's time for another AEW news update, as a former AEW and WWE wrestler has returned to the ring. Eddie Kingston talks why he chose AEW over WWE, and has an AEW New Japan working relationship been confirmed. But first, it's a few days late, but I just want to quickly cover the AEW ratings for this week's Dynamite for those that missed them. As expected, AEW once again came out on top of their NXT rivals, drawing 762,000 viewers compared to 551,000 for WWE's Gold brand. Dynamite saw an increase in overall viewership of 15.1% from last week, with a 20% increase in the key demo rising to a 0.3. NXT were down in both areas, with 14% less overall viewership and 12.5% less in the key demo, landing a 0.14. Both shows were once again affected by the political world, with coverage of President Trump's impeachment dominating the cable news channels this past Wednesday. But with that said, let's get into the next story, as former AEW Women's Champion Nyla Rose was scheduled to wrestle Leyla Hirsch on this week's AEW Dynamite, but has now been pulled from the show. She released a statement on Twitter regarding the reason for the cancellation, and she said, "I've found out that an immediate family member has tested positive for COVID-19, and as a result, I've been directly exposed. As per safety protocol, I'll be isolating / self-quarantining for the next 14 days. Why do I mention this? Because of the seriousness of the situation and the timeline for quarantine. This will affect this weekend's virtual meet and greet with Damage 365 promotions and prevent me from competing against Leyla Hirsch this coming Wednesday on Dynamite. I'm very sorry to anyone that was looking forward to these events, but keeping everyone as safe as possible must be a priority at this time. Thank you for understanding. Stay safe everyone, please social distance and mask up." And we wish Nyla and her family member all the best and hope to see her return to action as soon as possible. On January the 3rd, it was reported that AEW would be moving home for the month of February, with Miami being penciled in as the filming location for episodes of Dynamite, Dark, as well as the Revolution pay-per-view. According to Bodyslam.net, who originally reported the news, AEW are now set to stay in Jacksonville indefinitely. Whoa, stop. Subscribe, put the bell on. Continue. An email is said to have been sent out to employees of the company confirming the change of plans, and the shows are now set to continue at Daly's Place. And before we continue, I just want to quickly plug a Chris Jericho documentary that we uploaded yesterday. I cover his entire run as AEW champion, and it's the first part of a series of videos I'll be making covering all of the AEW championship belts. Next up will be Jon Moxley's reign as AEW champion, so keep an eye out for that. And let me know of any other documentaries that you want to see down in the comments below. But yeah, as I say, after this video, make sure you check out the Chris Jericho one. And following contradicting reports as to Jay White's contract status with New Japan, his profile has now been removed from the company's website. And we won't dwell on this too much as it's likely a work, but we could well be seeing Jay White in AEW for other reasons that we'll come back to later. Recently appearing on Renee Paquette's podcast Oral Sessions, Eddie Kingston discussed choosing between AEW and WWE last year before ultimately signing with All Elite Wrestling.
Well, actually, I talked to Christopher Daniels. You know what I mean? They offered me the deal, and then I listened to the other side, I guess we could call them. I was just weighing options, but then my mother was the final nail. She goes, "You won't be happy over there, trust me." It's hard, but I'll tell you, the bottom line with the whole thing is I know more people at AEW, and I know there's a lot more heart there. Like people who love the business, who were in it, who didn't come from somewhere else. And then become a wrestler. You know what I mean? So like, I think for her, that's what she thought. She was like, I'm gonna be with people who love it just as much as I do.
And you can find the full clip over on Renee Paquette's Oral Sessions YouTube channel, which we will link in the description. Kingston also discussed his desire to be the top guy in AEW and said that should be everyone's goal. He named his dream opponent as Hiroshi Tanahashi, calling him the Steve Austin of New Japan. And given our final story of the day, a match with the Ace may not be too far-fetched. But before we get there, we've got one more story, as former WWE and AEW wrestler Matt Cardona, formerly known as Zack Ryder, made an appearance at last night's Impact pay-per-view, Hard to Kill. Ace Austin came to the ring demanding to be added to the night's X Division title match before being interrupted by Scott D'Amore, who brought out Cardona as his opponent. Cardona would win the match thanks to disqualification after Austin's friend Fulton got involved. Cardona managed to fight off both men after the bell, scoring a radio silence on Fulton. This is Matt Cardona's first wrestling appearance since his short run in All Elite Wrestling last year, which ended at AEW All Out, where he teamed with Dustin Rhodes, QT Marshall and Scorpio Sky in a win against the Dark Order. And I think this is the perfect fit for Matt Cardona. At the minute, the AEW roster is pretty stacked. I don't think going back to WWE would be a good option for him, at least not yet. And I think Impact could be a place where he can really thrive. And speaking of Impact Hard to Kill, the show may well have confirmed a relationship between New Japan and All Elite Wrestling. In the main event of the evening, AEW World Champion Kenny Omega teamed with the Good Brothers to take on Impact World Champion Rich Swann and his teammates Chris Sabin and Moose. Moose was brought in as a last-minute replacement for Alex Shelley, who was forced to be removed from the match. As we predicted in our last news video, Kenny Omega pinned Rich Swann to get the win for his team, and this will no doubt lead to a champion versus champion match somewhere down the line, with Omega now earning a valid shot at the Impact Championship. Expect to see the belt collector add more gold to his waist very soon. During their entrance, Omega and his teammates wore Bullet Club gear on their way to the ring, with Omega wearing a Halloween version of the famous t-shirt, whilst the former IWGP Tag Champions donned Bullet Club jackets. Although the entrance gear of Omega and the Good Brothers is not 100% confirmation of a deal between AEW and New Japan, it certainly could be a huge sign of things to come. This storyline has seamlessly crossed over on both Impact and AEW shows, and it would make absolutely zero sense for this just to be an Impact exclusive thing, although we won't know for sure until we see the Bullet Club logo on Dynamite. With Bullet Club's Kenta calling out the IWGP United States Champion Jon Moxley for the better part of 2020, it seems he may now have backup in the form of his new stable mates. Gallows, Anderson and Omega have clashed with Moxley on Dynamite, and everything seems to be tying together nicely. This past week, Tama Tonga, also of the Bullet Club, has warned Omega not to call themselves Bullet Club, which indicates the civil war within the faction could be resuming as part of this angle. This could lead to other members such as Jay White or Kenta showing up in AEW as friend or foe of AEW's incarnation of the group. Gallows and Anderson have previously discussed how they will be going to New Japan as soon as the travel restrictions are lifted, and they have already had talks with the company. Impact already have ties with the Japanese promotion, with Chris Bay taking part in New Japan's Super J Cup this year, and this was the first trade between Impact and New Japan since the bridge was burnt after TNA's treatment of future star Kazuchika Okada. But this is a sign that New Japan's new management are willing to forget the past and rebuild any broken relationships. AEW and New Japan had heat following the signing of stars such as Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, but this latest development shows that we may well be seeing a crossover between all three promotions going forward. And what a time it is to be a wrestling fan. But like I said earlier, if you haven't already, make sure you check out the video that you can see on the screen right now, where we cover Chris Jericho's AEW World Championship reign. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe with notifications turned on, and make sure you drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it. But until next time, peace.